the dim glow of streetlights flickering as Milan made his way down the empty road. Then he saw her, a woman in a long white dress standing perfectly still beneath a flickering street lamp. At first he thought she was just another drunk or a lost soul wandering the night. But then, she began to dance. Her movements were wrong, jerky, unnatural, like her limbs were bending in ways they shouldn't. Her arms twisted, her head snapped to unnatural angles, her feet barely touched the ground. It was hypnotic and horrifying. Milan's breath hitched. She stopped, slowly, her head turned toward him, her body still swaying. Then she smiled. A wide grin stretched across her face, her lips curling unnaturally as she slowly lifted a long, glinting knife from beneath her dress. And then, she took a step forward. Milan's heart pounded. His instincts screamed, "Run!" The Serbian dancing lady had chosen him. Would he escape? Or would he become just another name in the legend? The street was empty, except for the dim glow of flickering streetlights casting long, eerie shadows on the pavement. Milan, wrapped in his dark gray hoodie, walked briskly, hands shoved into the pockets of his blue denim jeans, his breath forming faint clouds in the cool night air. It was well past midnight, and the roads were silent, too silent. Then he saw her. At first, he thought she was just another person out late, maybe a drunk woman lost in her own world. But something about her felt wrong. She stood under a broken street lamp, dressed in a flowing white gown, her head tilted down, long dark hair cascading over her face. She was dancing, but not in a way that looked natural. Her movements were stiff, jerky, like a puppet on invisible strings. Milan's steps slowed, his black t-shirt clinging slightly to his chest as an uneasy chill crept down his spine. His instincts whispered, "Keep walking, don't look." But he did. The woman's head snapped up suddenly as if she had heard his thoughts. Her face remained hidden in the shadows, but her body was still moving, twisting, bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. Her arms flailed unnaturally, her fingers twitching like broken claws. Milan's heartbeat quickened. His first thought was to pull out his phone and record, but as soon as his fingers gripped his phone inside his pocket, she stopped dancing. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then she took a step toward him. Milan felt his chest tighten, a primal fear he couldn't explain settling deep inside him. Her head tilted unnaturally, a long, eerie smile stretching across her pale face. Then she reached into the folds of her dress and slowly pulled out a long, glinting knife. Milan took a step back. She took another step forward. His breath hitched, his legs locked, and then in a single swift motion she lunged toward him. Panic surged through Milan's veins as he spun on his heels and bolted down the empty street. His heartbeat pounded in his ears as he ran, the sound of footsteps shuffling behind him. Fast, unnatural. The Serbian dancing lady had chosen him. And now, the chase had begun. Milan's legs burned as he sprinted down the empty street, the cold night air biting at his skin. His dark gray hoodie flapped behind him, and his blue denim jeans scraped against his knees as he pushed forward, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind him, the sound of shuffling footsteps echoed unnaturally. Not quite running, not quite walking, just wrong. He risked a glance over his shoulder. She was still dancing, but now, she was moving faster. Her body twitched and jerked in impossible ways, yet somehow, she was gaining on him. Milan's chest tightened. This wasn't possible. No one could move like that. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he cut into a side alley, hoping to lose her. The towering buildings closed in around him, their cracked facades and rusting fire escapes looming overhead. The alley was dark, too dark, but he had no choice. He ducked behind a row of dumpsters, pressing his back against the cold brick wall, forcing himself to breathe silently. His fingers trembled as he reached for his phone, but when he pressed the power button, the screen was dead. His heart dropped. It had 50% battery just minutes ago. The air grew heavy. The silence stretched too long. Then, a distorted giggle. Milan's blood turned to ice. He peered around the edge of the dumpster, his black t-shirt clinging to his chest, damp with sweat. The alley was empty. She was gone. A shaky exhale left his lips, his breath visible in the cold air. Maybe she had left. Maybe it was... A shadow moved above him. Milan's stomach twisted as he looked up. She was climbing down the fire escape head first like a spider, her body jerking and twisting in unnatural angles. Her smile had widened, her teeth now visible. Too many teeth. His breath hitched. His body screamed at him to move, but his legs felt frozen. Then she let go. She dropped straight down toward him, her knife raised high. Milan snapped out of his paralysis and launched himself out of the alley, sprinting faster than he ever had before. She was right behind him, and this time, she wasn't dancing. She was hunting. Milan's lungs burned, his legs screaming with exhaustion as he tore through the empty streets. His dark gray hoodie was damp with sweat, his blue denim jeans scraping against his skin as he pushed himself forward. But no matter how fast he ran, she was still behind him, her unnatural jerking movements closing the distance. Then up ahead, he saw it, a bridge. If he could reach it, maybe he could lose her. He sprinted toward the old stone bridge, crossing into a dimly lit section of town where only a few streetlights flickered weakly. His heart pounded as he reached the middle of the bridge and turned back. She was gone. Silence. Milan bent over, gasping for air. His hands gripped his knees as he fought to slow his breathing. Maybe she had given up? She never gives up. The voice was raspy, coming from just a few feet away. Milan's head snapped up. Sitting on the edge of the bridge was an old homeless man, wrapped in tattered clothes, his weathered face shadowed by the weak glow of a street lamp. "What?" Milan stammered. The man looked at him with empty, tired eyes. "You saw her dance, didn't you?" Milan hesitated, his skin crawling. Yeah, but..." The man shook his head. "You shouldn't have watched. Now she won't stop until she takes you." A chill ran down Milan's spine. Then he saw the old man's gaze shift past him, toward something behind him. Milan's breath caught in his throat. He turned slowly. There, just inches from his face, was the Serbian Dancing Lady, grinning, her knife raised high. And before Milan could scream, everything went dark. The next morning, the streets of Novi Sad were silent. The bridge where Milan had last been seen stood empty, bathed in the weak morning sunlight. The only evidence that something had happened was a single phone lying abandoned near the railing. Its screen cracked, its battery mysteriously dead. Milan was gone. His apartment remained untouched, his bed neatly made, his jacket still hanging on the chair. His friends called, texted, but he never answered. Days passed, then weeks, and then one night, a new video surfaced, a blurry phone recording, uploaded by an anonymous user. The footage was shaky, but it showed an empty street, a flickering street lamp, and her. The Serbian Dancing Lady, swaying unnaturally, her limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. Her long white dress billowed as she spun in jerky movements beneath the light. In the final few seconds of the video, the camera zooms in. The woman stops dancing, her head snaps toward the camera, and then a voice, barely a whisper, but unmistakable. "Milan?" The video ends, but the legend continues. Because once you've seen her dance, she never lets you go.